Hi there and welcome to this video in the IBM Cloud Foundation Skills Series, and in this video we're going to start creating some virtual server instances to go into our virtual private cloud. So as a quick recap, what we've got right now is our VPC, which I've created in London. You may have created it somewhere else, and we've got two subnets in two different zones. We've got our two zones are London 1 and London 2, and then we've got a subnet called LUN 1 subnet and LUN 2 subnet, again both in London. So what we're going to aim to get then is a virtual machine that we're going to build in London 1, in the London 1 subnet, and we're going to have another virtual machine which we're actually going to put into London 2. And what we're going to do is put a web server on each of those with a web server page, and then we'll show those actually working and flicking between the two before in the next video we actually put a load balancer in front of it. So without further ado, let's get into the IBM Cloud console. Okay, so here I am in my IBM Cloud account at cloud.ibm.com. I'm just going to go over to my my VPC infrastructure page, and here we are in the landing page. Now, since I started to record these VPC videos, IBM have actually released what they call Gen 2 Compute, which is a brand new set of computing for VPC. So we now have Gen 1 and Gen 2. So what we've been learning so far has all been Gen 1. Gen 2 is very, very similar. But what I'll do is I'll continue to talk now about Gen 1, and we'll talk about Gen 2 in a separate video. But Gen 2 is quite new, it's quite exciting, so it is something that we'll want to talk about. But as I say, for now we're going to continue on with Gen 1. So we're going to create some virtual servers. So I'm going to click my virtual server instance link over here, and when this page loads, you'll see that my virtual server instances list is actually empty. So I'm just going to check that I'm in the right region as well. So I'm going to make sure that I'm in the London region. Again, if you've created your VPC in a different region, just make sure that you're in the right region up here from this drop down. So I'm going to stick with London. So I'm going to create a brand new instance. So I'm going to click the New Instance button, and again, it's just going to remind me that I'm creating Gen 1 compute node here. If I want to go and do something with Gen 2, then I can click over here. But we'll, as I say, we'll cover that in another video. So this is pretty much similar to creating a virtual machine in what we call classic infrastructure. So I'm just going to give my server a name. Now again, I'm going to stick with a naming convention. So I'm going to call this Web Server 1. And I'm going to call it London 1, because I'm going to create this in my London 1 zone. I'm going to check that my virtual private cloud is correct, so it's my London VPC. I'm going to put it in a resource group, so again I'm going to put this in my VPC resource group. Now I can add some tags to this if I want to, so I can, if it's for a particular environment or a particular project, but I'm going to leave that blank at the moment, but feel free to put some tags in. I'm going to ensure that my location is correct, so as I say, I'm going to create this in London Zone 1, so the London 1 data center. Next I choose my image, so I can choose from, well, you can see here CentOS, Debian, Red Hat, Ubuntu, Windows Server. I can also use a custom image, so if there's a virtual machine that I've already created elsewhere and I've got an image from that, then I can import that. We'll perhaps look at that in another video later on because it's a little bit more detailed. But for now, I'm going to stick with CentOS. I can then choose the profile that I want. So what CPU, what RAM do I want? So again, you can choose from these common 3, or I can look at all profiles. So I've got different profiles here. So balance between compute and memory resources. If I want to do something that's fairly compute or CPU intensive, then I can choose from these configurations here. And also if I want something that's a bit more memory intensive, then I can choose from these ones here. I'm just going to go back to the popular profiles, and I'm just going to choose a balance. I'm going to choose a 2 vCPUs, 8 gig of RAM, and 1 gigabit per second of network speed. So I'm just going to make sure that's ticked there. So then I need an SSH key. So when we actually log into this server, we actually use an SSH key to do so. So we no longer have root and then a password. What we actually have is the SSH key. So remember in previous videos we created our SSH key, and then we applied it to the VPC. So this is shown here. So it's the default that I've got. It's the only one that I've got. So it's my London key. So I just need to make sure that I've got the key still on my laptop. I've actually had a new laptop fairly recently, so I've had to migrate the key. And obviously if I lose the key, then I can't get onto the virtual machine anymore. So it's quite important to make sure that you've got your SSH key and you don't lose your information. So this next box here is around user data. I'm not going to go into this when I provision this machine, but I'm going to create another machine in a moment, and I'll show it to you then. In this next section, we're going to talk about we're specifying the boot volume. So in terms of the boot volume, I can change certain things about that. So I can change the name of it if I want to. I'm kind of okay with that because it tells me it's for web server 1, London 1, so that's the server name, and it's the boot image, so I'm quite happy with that. In terms of the profile, it's tiered, so that's fixed for me. In terms of the size and the IOPS, those are all also fixed for me. The interesting thing really here is around encryption. So at the moment this is provider managed, so IBM Cloud are actually managing the encryption for me. But if I wanted to, I could also use Key Protect, and I can also use Hyper Protect crypto services. Again, I'm not going to use these because I'm not going to talk about them in this video, but those are other options that you can explore if you want to. So I'm going to stick with provider managed. The other thing here is auto delete, so it's enabled by default here, and I can't actually change that. So what this means is that whenever this machine gets deprovisioned or I delete it, then this disk will also be deleted along with it. So any data that I put on that disk will also disappear along with the server. Now, the other thing I can actually do is put more data volumes on this machine too if I want to. So if I click New Volume, then what I can actually create is a new block storage volume that will then be automatically attached to this server. So if I want to do that, I can give it a name. So I could call this my website storage. Let's call it that for now. I'm not actually going to create this disk, but I'll just quickly show you how to do it. So there's a profile. So if I have tiered, then I can enter a storage size that needs to be between 10 and 2000 gig. So let's say 30 gig. And then I can choose the IOPS that I want this to run at as well. So I can use 3, 5, or 10. Going back to some of the storage videos, you'll know that the higher the IOPS number, essentially the more input-output operations per second can actually be performed on that disk. So to bear that in mind when you're creating these disks. Again, you've got the encryption options, so I won't explain those again. But here you've got the auto delete, so I can either disable or enable that. So if I disable it, then it means that when I actually delete this server, that block storage volume won't automatically be deleted as well. So that means that any data that's on there will persist, and it also means that I can then actually attach this block storage volume to another virtual server as well, so a new one that I create in the future. So I'm not actually going to create this disk, but I thought I'd just show you that screen. Perhaps we'll have a look at block storage, creating block storage and attaching it to servers as another video later on. So I'm just going to cancel that. In terms of network interfaces, again, I've got a default network interface of ETH0, and it's actually attached to my security group. So it's attached to my 70 tipper Sudoku duplicate skipper. So I can edit that. So what I want to do is actually add that to my web tier security group and take it out of my out of the default one, which has this slightly odd name. And again, I can say which subnet I want it to be in. So it's obviously my LON1 subnet. So I can save that. So you can see that's updated. And then if I wanted to create a new new interface, so if I wanted to have, let's say, a private and a public interface, then I can add a new one here. So again, I'm not going to do this, but if you need multiple network interfaces for your server, you can do that here. So I'm just going to cancel that. So what have I done? So let's just double check this. So I've given it a name, so web server 1 London 1, which is a naming convention. So I know it's my web server, I know it's web server 1, and I know it's in London 1 when I look at it. I've double checked that it's my virtual private cloud. I've put it in a resource group so I can manage it and give access to other users. I've chosen my image, so I've chosen CentOS as my operating system. Then I've chosen my profile, so it's going to be a machine with 2 virtual CPUs, 8 gig of RAM, and a 1 gigabyte network connection. I've said which SSH key I'm going to use for my connection to it. If I SSH into the server, I've left the user data blank for now. I've shown you my boot volume, and I've decided not to create a data volume or create a new network interface. So the next step is just to check the details over this side. I will be charged for this, so again, you do need an account which is PayGo or subscription account to do this. You won't be able to create this on a free tier account. So what I do is check those. I then click this button here, create virtual server instance, and away it goes. So I've got a notice here saying it's creating the virtual server instance, and this screen will refresh in a short while. And when it's done, and there we go, we can now see that the server is pending. So it's going to take a couple of minutes to just provision. So I'm just going to pause the video there, and I'll come back in a moment. Right, okay, welcome back. So you can now see that my web server is ready. So that probably took about 2 minutes. So you can now see that it's powered on. This little dot here has gone green. It's saying powered on, and you can see now that I've got a web server 1 in my private cloud. So you can see what profile it is. So if I hover over that, you can see what processor there is, and you can see that it's now got an IP address as well. So this is actually a private IP address though. So at the moment I can't attach to this publicly in any way at all, and so to SSH into this server, I need to give it a floating IP address. So let's click here and let's do that. So here you can see this is drilling down, and it's showing me some more information about my instance. So again, it tells you about the boot volume, what's there. I can attach another volume from here if I've created one, which so far I haven't. So I'll show you that in another video. So basically this is all the details about the server. If I click on here as well, you can see that there's some monitoring information. So you can see some details about some metrics here. You can download this CSV as well, so you can do some charting on that as well if you want to outside of this. I'm not going to show you too much about this other than to make you aware that it's here. So I'm going to just go back to my overview again. So what I'm going to do here is actually give this a floating IP address so that I can then actually log into this via SSH. So I'm just going to click here, reserve, and this takes a few seconds to complete. And there you go, I've now got a floating IP address. So this is my public IP address, which has been reserved and attached to this server. So if I click here, I can copy it, which is nice. And then all I'm going to do is open up a terminal window, and I'm now going to go and connect to my server. So to connect to this server, I need to use SSH, and I also need to use my SSH key that I created earlier. So to do this, I type SSH -i and then .ssh, which is the path to my key. So it's my London key, and then I need to do root at and then the IP address of the server. So this is the IP that I just copied. So there we go. So it's going to ask me if I'm sure, because it's the first time I've actually connected to this server. So I'm going to say yes. So because I had a passphrase in my key, I need to enter that again. So I'm going to just do that as well, and then click enter. And in a couple of minutes, or rather in a couple of moments, I will be attached to my server. So there you go. You can see now that I'm actually attached to my server. So there's a couple of things that we can do here. We can actually run a yum update just to make sure everything is up and running. So I'm just going to do yum update -y, and it will go off and go off and do that. So it's going to determine the fastest mirrors. So again, this might take a couple of minutes just to run. It's a good habit to do this when you create a new server, but when we actually create the next server, what we'll do is show you how to do that in a more automated way as well. So I'm just going to let that run. Again, what we'll probably do is just pause the video here, because it's not very exciting watching this trundle through. So I'll just pause here. And okay, as you can see on the screen there, that's the yum update is now completed. So that probably took about 3 or 4 minutes. What I'm going to do now is actually install the HTTP server. So we obviously want this to be a web server. So I'm just going to use yum to install that. So I'm going to type in yum install -y just to confirm that I want it installed, HTTPD, and this will go away and now install the the web server for me. This normally is really quick, so I'm not going to pause the video. And there we go, it's now completed. And let's go and now create a web server, or website rather. So if I cd to var www html, so going to this directory, and then I use vi. So again, I'm using Mac here, so I'm going to use vi. I'm just going to create a file called index.html, and this is going to be quite simple. So just to quickly explain the file that I've just created here. So basically it's just a bit of HTML code. So all it does is create a page. It's got a title that says this is Web Server 1. And then the body of the page is just in big letters. This is Web Server 1 in London 1. So let's just save that. And then I'm just going to start the web server. So I'm going to type in httpd -k start. And then the type that in properly, httpd -k start, and there we go. So the web server should now actually be started, so let's just go and make sure that's the case. So I'm going to go over here, I'm going to create a new tab in my browser and just type in http and that address, and there you go. So you can see this is Web Server 1 in London 1. Okay, so we're going to quickly go back and just create a new server, and I'm going to show you how to do this in a slightly different way, using one of these user datas. So I'm going to give this a name. So I'm going to call this Web Server 2 London 2. That's going to be in my London VPC. I'm going to put it in my VPC resource group again. I want this time it to be in London 2. Still going to be CentOS. I'm still going to use the same image. What I'm going to do here is I'm actually going to use a script. So I've already created this script. You can type the information in here as well, but I've just typed this in for speed. I've put it in a file here called runcommand.sh. So I'm just going to choose that. So what this script is, I'm just going to see if I can. I can actually make that slightly bigger. So what I'm doing here is I've told it it's a cloud config. I'm running commands. So I'm going to run a yum update -y. So it's going to update the server for me when it's created. It's then going to install httpd for me. It's then going to create that index.html file. So what I'm doing here is an echo. So it's going to echo into this file. So I'm just going to change some information here. So I'm going to say this is Web Server 2 in London 2, and we're going to just do this again. So London 2, and the rest I'm just going to leave the same. So it's going to install. So it's going to do the yum update. It's going to install httpd for me. So I'm going to create my index.html file, and it's then going to start the web server for you. Now here you might have something which is it's going to be the same every single time. The reason why I'm having this as different is just to then show you just set it up for the load balancer tutorial, which we're doing next. So the rest of this is all going to be exactly the same. So I'm just checking I'm creating this in London 2, and then I'm just going to click the button here. And again, this will now go off and start creating my virtual server instance. So again, I'm going to pause the video here. It's going to take a little bit longer this time because it's obviously doing those yum updates as well. Right, so my second server is now actually finished provisioning, so it's powered on. I need to give it a floating IP address, so let's just go and do that. So it's exactly the same as last time. Just click through to the name of the server and just click reserve, so the floating IP address. Okay, and let's just copy the floating IP address. I'm going to bring up my terminal screen again. So I'm going to just go into a different one here, just so you can see the difference. So let's just make that a bit bigger, make sure you can see it. So I'm going to SSH instead, so SSH -i dot SSH, so the location of my key, so it's my London key, and then root at the IP address of my server. So So same again, I want to continue to connect. I need to put in my my password. Right, there we go. We're actually connected to our machine then. So let's just check that this has actually worked. So var www HTML, and should now see. Well, it has actually created the index file, unfortunately, but let's just try that again. So cd var www HTML, and let's do a listing. There we go. So it has created it because I was trying to cd into it. So it's created the index.html file. So if I just have a look at that, then again you can see this is web server 2 in London 2. What we can do now is just go and check that this website is actually running. So let's go to here. So HTTP and the host name. So again, you can see this is web server 2 in London 2. So you can see now that I've got both of these servers up and running. You can see that they're two different machines. So imagine that these are actually the same website. So normally these two web servers would have exactly the same content on. But as I said, for the sake of the load balancer exercise we're going to do next, I'm just going to keep these two different so you can see the two things switching. Okay, so that's it for the lab part of this this exercise. So just to wrap up, this is our architecture overview as it stands now. So we've got our VPC in the London region. We've got our subnet in London 1, which now has a virtual machine in it, which is server 1, London 1. And we now have a virtual machine in our London 2 zone as well, on our London 2 subnet, which is called server 2, London 2. We've installed, we've done our yum updates. We've installed HTTPD server on there. We've created a web page as well. And we've actually shown the two websites up and running. So as I say, that's it for this particular video. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you next time when we start to talk about load balancers.